the Sports Talkers, but I'm David Heller. Donnie, it's Championship Sunday in the National Football League. More like Championship Week in the National Football League.
And I'm nervous.
Yep, but we also have some news to talk about that came down about Jim Harbaugh, which we will get to right here, right now.
More local, more meaningful. This is News 9.
And by the way, I did get with Thunderbirds about making a new intro. More on the also another topic, the upcoming plans for the podcast beyond the Super Bowl. We'll talk about that later in the show. But in the meantime, welcome to another week, Donnie, of the Sports Talkers. Like I said, it's championship week in the National Football League. I know you're nervous. Obviously, we know who the matchups are. Chiefs, Ravens on the AFC side, Lions, 49ers on the NFC side. We will get to the predictions here shortly, but topic number one, Jim Harbaugh. He is going from Ann Arbor to Los Angeles to be the next head coach of the LA Chargers. Any thoughts on that?
A lot of people are going to say, oh, NFL team is only hiring a head coach from college. It's not going to work out. But Pete Carroll is no different.
Yeah.
Pete Carroll is on the level of Jim Harbaugh is on the level of Pete Carroll.
Mm-hmm. Agreed, because Harbaugh has already coached in the NFL before, and oh, by the way, he's proven to be successful too, by the way. And also, a little fun fact, as far as I know, and Donnie, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong on this, but Pete Carroll is the only one that I know of, looking at statistics, is the only head coach to have won both the national championship in college football and the Super Bowl in the pros. Jim Harbaugh already has a national championship on his resume. Did that this past season at Michigan. Imagine if he led the Chargers to the Super Bowl and actually winning it. And Harbaugh could become the second one after Pete Carroll to have accomplished that feat. That would be incredible if Harbaugh can do that. But my thoughts are, I'm not surprised by it. To me, it was just a matter of time before Harbaugh was going to get the call to the NFL. Whether it was the Chargers, whether it was the Raiders, who was in the running for a little bit until they found their man in Antonio Pierce, or the Atlanta Falcons. It was just a matter of time before Harbaugh was going to come back to the NFL. But at the same time, if I were an Ohio State fan, I would not be celebrating the departure of Jim Harbaugh from Ann Arbor yet. Not yet. Because they are going to hire the offensive coordinator Harbaugh had on his staff. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's Sherrone Moore?
Sherrone Moore.
Sherrone Moore, thank you. Sherrone Moore to be the next head coach in Ann Arbor. And he was on Harbaugh's staff too. And on top of that, he coached for those 4 games while Harbaugh was, suspended. So, and of course, Michigan won those games even while Harbaugh was not on the sidelines. So, I would say right now, if I were a fan of Ohio State, this is probably step one. Getting Harbaugh out of Ann Arbor and back to the NFL. That was step number one. Now, you got to start wondering, what's going to happen to the recruiters that Harbaugh recruited? Are they going to start going, to different places? Is people going to now start declaring for the NFL draft and potentially get drafted by the Chargers, just because of how well they did on Harbaugh, which we'll see about that. And speaking of the transfer portal, anything new on the transfer portal, Donnie?
Will Rogers, he is staying at Washington. Gonna play for Jed Fish. And Jada Delora, after taking the Texas State job, and TJ Finley went to Western Kentucky. Now Delora is back in the portal. Now Texas State has no quarterback.
What in the world is Texas State doing? I guess the response from that is beats me. and then the one receiver, his name slipped from my mind. He's the one that backed out when the Saban news came out a couple weeks ago that he was not going to come to Alabama. The wide receiver,
Ryan Williams.
Yep, he's now recommitted to Alabama as well.
We got another one. Clifton McDowell, the star from Montana, who was in the FCS championship finals. He just committed to Temple.
Ooh, Temple is a pretty interesting one. We'll see what happens there with Temple. But
coming off losing EJ Warner to Rice.
Yeah, that should be pretty interesting to see what happens with that. And of course, you know, we'll have a lot more transfer portal updates as we head through the spring and certainly after spring prep this season ends, because there's also, of course, another window where transfer portal happens. And yeah. So before we get to the championship Sunday predictions, some people out there who may be watching this may be wondering, what in the world happened to the prior episodes of this podcast? Well, let me tell you what happened. My channel, Game Show Island, which is the channel that does game shows, which that's basically right up mine and Donnie's alley, well, it got terminated. Because of a certain A&Q show that was famously hosted by Alex Trebek that I shared pretty often, and yeah, it got
Sony got mad at him.
Yep. Unfortunately, that was what got me taken down. And on top of that, all my associate channels, including my previous one that I uploaded the podcast to, well, guess what? It also went down with that. Now, fortunately, some of the prior episodes can be found on other podcast-related platforms. But if you're looking for some of the prior episodes on YouTube and you're looking for a video form of it, you're not going to find it, because all the previous ones that I've shared in the past, well, they're gone now, unfortunately. So, pretty much having to start over again, which is fine. I'm under a new name, which we'll talk about at the end. But that's pretty much the reason why all my prior podcast episodes disappeared. It's because it was associated with a channel that I used to upload game shows, including, like I said, the famous A&Q show that was so famously hosted by the late, great Alex Trebek. May he rest in paradise. So, with that said, here we go, Donnie. Championship Sunday time. We are starting with the AFC, which, of course, is on CBS. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs travel to Baltimore to take on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Who do we have here in this one?
Baltimore fans are just hoping that Swift Mania goes dead.
Yep.
After this Sunday. Lamar Jackson is just 2 wins away from turning himself into I want out of Baltimore to a unbeaten, untouched Super Bowl champion. Well, not unbeaten because he lost 4 times, but untouched. He's pretty much untouched this whole season.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his chance to send the defending champs packing. The Chiefs could have had 5 Super Bowl rings right now with Mahomes.
Yep.
He's obviously going to be he's obviously the next Tom Brady, Mahomes. Who do I think is going to win this one? I'm going to say Baltimore in a very close one because it's in Baltimore. 34-31.
34-31. I have the Ravens too, but this is going to be a defensive battle in my opinion because we're talking about 2 elite defenses, especially thus far in the postseason. Now, for the Chiefs, it wasn't the case very much in the regular season because there were times where the Chiefs' defense struggled. But so far in the postseason, yeah, Chiefs' defense have really shined. So I think it's going to be a defensive battle, but I think because of the problems in the wide receiver core with Kansas City, I'm going to take the Ravens in a slightly low-scoring affair, but not completely a low-scoring affair. Ravens 21, Chiefs 16. Ravens to the Super Bowl. Now, who will join the Ravens in Las Vegas for Super Bowl 58? Well, let's head over to the NFC side of things. Dan Campbell, Jared Goff, and the Cinderella story that is the Detroit Lions are coming to Santa Clara to take on Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, we don't know right now if Deebo Samuel is going to play or not. So that may or may not play a factor in terms of who we predict here. But what do you think, Donnie?
We don't even know if Sam Laporta is going to play.
That's true.
And Sam Laporta I just got word that he returned to practice, so he might be hobbled, but he's going to try all his best to team up with Zach Ertz and Gibbs and Montgomery in order to torch this defense of San Francisco.
Yep.
Give me San Francisco in this one, 2017.
49ers 20-17.
I heard Deebo was doing a little sprints on the sidelines.
Yeah.
But we still don't know for sure if that's going to happen, if he's going to play.
Yeah, Ben. And, of course, if Samuel doesn't play, that's going to be a big loss for the 49ers. So that's basically what I'm taking into account is that Deebo Samuel is not going to be 100%, normal. I definitely agree it's going to be a close one, but I have this in a slightly high-scoring affair. Give me the Lions 31-28. And it's based on a couple of factors. One of the factors is that the 49ers in the past several years have struggled in the NFC Championship game, including last season when they went to Philadelphia and lost to the Eagles in the NFC Championship game last year. Granted, this time around, the 49ers are going to be at home for the NFC Championship game, but statistics don't lie. And I think the struggles in the NFC Championship game for the 49ers is going to continue.
Yeah, plus 2 years ago, Cincinnati Bengals had a Cinderella story, finally winning their first playoff game in 3 decades and making it to the Super Bowl.
Yep.
It could happen the same for the Lions.
Yep, exactly. So we'll see what happens, but honestly, no doubt, speaking of the Lions, I think no doubt in my mind, Dan Campbell should get Coach of the Year honors, especially if the Lions was to go all the way to the Super Bowl. Dan Campbell should absolutely get Coach of the Year honors. We'll see what happens.
Brock Purdy has turned himself into an absolute star. There's no doubt he truly is the king of Mr. Irrelevance.
Oh, yes. That is true. That is true because Brock Purdy, I must say, has done pretty well. Just got to get over that hump in these NFC championship games.
And he was last year. He was part of that. That he was in panic mode. The Niners were on life support basically in last year's championship game against Philly.
Against the Eagles. So really, in a sense, you can't really fault Brock Purdy there. It was just one of those games where the 49ers had a lot of injuries, and yeah, that's what happens when you get a lot of players injured, and of course the Eagles. Oh, it just makes you wonder what in the world happened to these Eagles. Fortunately, they are making some coordinator changes. Brian Johnson and Sean Desai, along with Matt Patricia. Not a surprise there with the latter. They're all being let go in Philly, which honestly, I don't know what you think, Donnie, but honestly, that needed to happen because going 1-6, including the playoffs down the stretch, after coming off, representing the NFC in the Super Bowl and losing, no, absolutely not. That is not okay for any team. So I'm glad to see that the Eagles are making those said changes. Unlike the Cowboys, who allowed a 7 seed to win its first playoff game in the expanded playoffs era and not make any changes and decide that, we're going to run things back next season.
The Bengals, too.
Yeah, that's true. But the difference is the Bengals did not allow a 7 seed to come into their own building and destroy them like what those Cowboys, or should I say those cow turds, did. Oh my goodness. But yeah, as for what's going to happen with this podcast beyond this week, because of course after the championship game we are going to get into a lull where not much in the football world is going to happen until the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. And so what I'm thinking is that next week, I'm thinking of testing a new format where, yes, we still talk about sports and that sort of stuff, but also incorporating in the other stuff that Donnie and I both have a passion for. So in the case of Donnie, I know you're into bowling, right? You're also into what else? You're into rock and roll stories as well.
And we just today, a popular music icon passed, Melanie, who gave the world a brand new key.
Yeah. Which that stuff we can definitely go more in depth on actually next week, and also of course game shows. So what I'm thinking is that going forward past the end of the football season, reformat this podcast and turn it into basically sort of a everything type of a podcast where, yes, we'll still talk sports, of course, but also get into other stuff that Donnie and I both are pretty passionate in. Like for me, I am well versed in terms of weather, and I'm sure Donnie, you could probably attest to that. I am well versed when it comes to the weather, so I may talk a little bit about the weather, and of course, I may talk about other things like game shows, what's going on in the game show world, different things like that. So you'll see, you the viewers out there, you'll see a lot more of that in action over the course of the next several weeks. Of course, we will be testing that out next week before we go back to this current format for the Super Bowl week. But then starting the week after the Super Bowl, I think this new format will take into effect, and I think you, the viewer, is going to like some of the changes that we're going to be doing. So, in the meantime, thanks to everybody for watching this.
It's over so quickly, guys, but it's just a very little show. Just previewing you all guys for the Super Bowl.
Yep. Predicting the Super Bowl. Not a lot is happening. Just those 2 games. So this is going to be a very brief podcast. And yep. In the meantime, enjoy Championship Sunday, everybody. And I will see you all with a new format. Donnie and I will see you in a new format for this podcast next week at the same time, Knuckleheads.
Yep.
So long, everybody.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on America Online, the keyword CBS News. Distributed by King One.